I, 27F, want to start this by saying I absolutely love my younger sister, Catherine. I have no idea what has happened in the last few days that has caused her to completely change her feelings towards me. You see, I have been raising and taking care of my younger sister, who is currently 24 years old, ever since our parents passed away. I was just 19 years old and Catherine was 16 years old when our parents met with a car accident while driving back from church. We were heartbroken, to say the least. Not just because we had lost them, but also because the last time we spoke to our parents, we were all fighting. Our parents were extremely controlling since the time we were born. Being the eldest child, I was literally their scapegoat for everything. I was not allowed to wear certain colorful clothes or go out with open hair, as my mother felt that it would attract boys. She would tell me how I needed to act like a girl all the time and would teach me things like to cross my legs while sitting and to not drink water directly from a bottle. I know how ridiculous this sounds, but believe me, this is what my mother was like. She would strictly check my appearance every time I had to step out of the house and would smack my hand with a ruler if I was not abiding by her rules. I remember once at a school fair, I wanted to wear a skirt just like all my friends had decided. I knew my mother would say no, so I decided to sneak my skirt into my backpack so I could later change into my school washroom and take pictures with my friends. Well, it turns out, it was a huge mistake. Someone's parents who also belonged to the church spotted the four of us wearing skirts and complained about it to our parents. Suffice it to say, my parents were furious. As a punishment, my mother made me kneel down on the ground continuously for 4 hours until my knees were sore and I had to beg my mother for mercy. My dad did not allow me to have dinner that night as he felt I was being too much of a spoiled girl. He told me that I was not allowed to be friends with those girls and that he would take away my bedroom door if I continued talking to those girls. I remember crying a lot in bed that night and wishing I had better parents. As you can imagine, because of this incident, I was so traumatized that I decided to stop being friends with those girls. I didn't want any trouble. I was afraid of making new friends as I didn't want to get in trouble later. My parents were also extremely obsessed with my grades. My mother would wake me up every morning at 5 so I could study before going to school. She would sit and knit while I would try to memorize the chapters for the day. Sometimes she would quiz me from the book, and if I wasn't able to memorize, then she would slap me or threaten to not give me breakfast. This is why all throughout my high school I had the perfect grades so my parents could then brag about it to their church friends. Things got even worse once Catherine was born. While I was treated poorly, my sister got the best from our parents. I don't know if it was because they were tired of monitoring me and cared less about her, or if they just liked torturing me specifically, but my parents were very different around Catherine. While I was beaten up for small things, they never raised a hand on her. At first, it became clearer. You see, my sister looks exactly like my mother, the same blonde hair, blue eyes, and thin lips. My mother would always point out her features and tell everyone how beautiful her second child was. On the other hand, my mother would judge my weight and monitor it. During high school, when I started putting on a bit of weight because I was depressed and I had literally nobody to talk to, my mother would poke and pinch my belly to get a reaction out of me. She would taunt me that I was too big and that when she was my age, she was the skinniest in her class, so I needed to lose weight too. Her words still haunt me to this day because I cannot imagine how my own mother could have talked to me that way. As a result, I was not allowed to eat certain food items after that, and she would cook my food without oil and salt in order for me to lose weight. The food tasted bland and was literally so bad, however, I could not even complain about it. However, Catherine had no such restrictions. Whenever anybody pointed out to my mother that I was intelligent and that I would go to great heights, she would find a way to bring the conversation to Catherine and would tell the person how her second child is so gorgeous and reminds her so much of herself on account of her beauty. This became a usual thing for her, and it made me feel really bad for my looks and weight as a child. Can you imagine how it feels to hear your parents constantly compliment one child just because they look similar to them while I was made fun of for my weight? My mother would remind me every day that I needed to look presentable and beautiful if I ever wanted a husband in the future, otherwise I would remain an embarrassing spinster for life. When I was in 8th grade and my sister was in 5th grade, my mother started trying to convince Catherine to take part in a children's beauty contest. Now Catherine has never been a confident child, hence she was understandably apprehensive about walking and talking in front of an audience. She tried to refuse, but mother was adamant. She assured Catherine that it was going to be fun. Turns out that Catherine won the contest, and I think this was the day that changed all our lives, perhaps for the worse. After this, my mother became obsessed with Catherine and would force her to take part in multiple beauty contests in a year. My dad would support this idea as well because they were winning cash prizes, which he loved. Catherine would sometimes tell me how scary and uncomfortable she felt during these contests, since there were a lot of grown men who would stand around the stage and ogle at them. Apparently, a few of those men would even approach our mother and encourage her to bring Catherine to various auditions, which my younger sister was not at all comfortable with. Clearly, this was all my mother's dreams, and she was trying to live vicariously through her daughter. I felt so bad for Catherine that I tried talking to my mother about it, but as usual, I was dismissed before I could even finish my point. My mother taunted me that I was just being jealous of my younger sister since I was not beautiful like her. One day when I came back home from school, I found Catherine crying in our bedroom. Our dad was at work and our mother was out for groceries. She looked terribly upset, which made me concerned, so I asked her if something had happened to her. This is when Catherine starts recounting how a man she had seen previously in one of her beauty contests had been apparently stalking her at school. I was shocked when I heard her recount how the man had tried to approach her through our school fence and told her that he had always wanted to talk to her. This was an extremely disturbing situation, and I told her that she needed to tell our parents immediately. However, Catherine started to cry and told me that she was scared to do so because no one would believe her. I promised her that I believed her and that I would hold her hand while she recounted what she told me to our parents. To no one's surprise, when we told our parents during dinner that night, my dad looked at us nonchalantly while my mother told Catherine that she should be happy that she had a new fan. Our parents refused to take her seriously and told Catherine that she must be overreacting. It was impossible to argue with them and Catherine looked defeated. Because our parents refused to believe Catherine, I decided to take the situation into my own hands. The next day, I told Catherine's homeroom teacher about how this strange adult guy was trying to talk to my little sister. She was as concerned as us and assured me that she would talk to the principal and they would investigate further. Turns out, what Catherine said was true, so my principal decided to call our parents and alert them about this so they could file a proper complaint with the police. However, our parents, instead of thanking the principal for telling them about this dangerous man, waited for us to come back home so they could shout at us. Mother told us how she was embarrassed that we had made a big deal about this and that people were calling them to inquire about it. Dad scolded us that because of what we did, people would now assume that they were not taking care of us enough. They shouted a lot at Catherine and told her how lucky she was to be this beautiful since she didn't have the brains to survive in this world. They refused to let us have dinner that night and sent us to bed hungry. I heard Catherine cry in hunger throughout the night and I felt so bad for the both of us. However, the next day, Catherine stopped talking about it and did not want to have any conversation regarding the man. She told me that our parents were right and that she should have never told me in the first place. She also blamed me for going to the teachers about it and spilling the beans, since that further escalated the problem. Since this incident, Catherine stopped sharing a lot of things about her life with me. Although lucky for her, our teachers kept a sharp eye on her in case if the man ever returned. She sort of blamed me for how things turned out with our parents. It is also important to note that my mother would constantly criticize me to my face and behind my back to Catherine, and I guess this made my younger sister respect me a lot less. She started to dislike me for being so different from her. When previously, we at least had each other to share our secrets with, after the incident, she kept to her side of the room and seldom talked to me. Catherine went on to win more and more awards and made my parents very happy. She would closely monitor her food intake to make sure she was not gaining weight and would judge me if I ever had a pizza or a burger. As you can imagine, we did not remain close as I grew tired of her talking and behaving like our mother. She would even taunt me just like our mother to lose weight, even though I was never overweight to begin with, but in their minds, they expected women to look a certain way and hated me for looking different. When I started wearing glasses, she would sometimes tease me about how embarrassing it was for her to have an older sister who looked like me and that her classmates would tease her about it. As much as I felt bad for myself, I felt bad for her too for turning into our mother. When I graduated high school, I could not wait to leave my house and finally be free at college. But it turns out my parents did not want me to pursue higher education. They started to tell me how they knew a nice church guy who was looking to get married and that they had discussed and felt I would be perfect for him. Just out of curiosity, I asked them about who it was and it turned out to be a 32-year-old guy they knew from church. I almost puked when I found out and I could not believe the audacity my parents had to even think about this. My mother tried to convince me that being 18 was the best age for me to get married and that I may not get such a good guy ever again. I vehemently refused and started applying to colleges so I could get out of the hellhole as soon as possible. I also took up a part-time job so I could earn some money in the meantime. When my dad realized that I was earning money, he started to insist that I needed to start paying him money for my groceries and bills as he didn't want to house a freeloader like me. I had no choice but to agree. Weeks and months passed by and I was not getting any reply back from college, which worried me. I knew I was an excellent student, so there was no reason why a college would not select me, but even if they didn't, I would at least receive a rejection letter. One morning, when I woke up early, I found my mother sneaking mail from our mailbox into her closet. My suspicions were up, and as much as I wanted to confront her about it right then and there, I knew she would not give me a straight answer, so I waited for her to get out of the house for errands. Later, when she left, I checked her closet and this is how I found out that my mother had been hiding letters from my college for the past few months. I opened the letters to discover that I had been accepted into 2 universities, which almost made me cry tears of joy. One of these universities was offering me a full scholarship as long as I could maintain excellent grades. I immediately called back the college number so I could accept their offer and agreed to send all my documents. That day, for the first time, in a long while, I breathed a sigh of relief as I realized that I was finally getting out of this house. I knew there was no reason to confront my mother about her hiding my letters, as she would deny it and come up with an excuse, hence I kept my mouth shut until it was time for me to move away to college. Unfortunately, my mother found out that the letters in her closet were missing and immediately confronted me about it. She didn't even try to deny it, as she directly asked me if I had found the letters and I replied yes. She then started to shout at me for going through her things and told me that I needed to drop this idea of going to college, as this is where girls go to get pregnant. I laughed hearing how ridiculous she sounded as she then continued telling me that I needed to find a guy and settle down as nothing is more important for a woman than becoming a mother. I told her firmly that I had already been accepted into college with a full scholarship, so whether I liked it or not, I would be moving. She was furious that I was trying to rebel against her. Later, when Dad came back home, she complained to him about me telling him how I was trying to sneak off to college behind their backs. He joined my mother to shout at me and demanded that I call back my university and reject their offer. I refused, so then he told me that I needed to empty my bank account and pay him every penny I had saved up in the account to pay him back for taking care of an ungrateful child like me all these years. I told them that there was no way that I would give them any more of my money and that I had worked so hard to save up for college so I could survive on my own. This infuriated my dad and he asked me to get out of his house. Now these are words that no child would like to hear from their parents, but that was the reality for me. At the age of 18, I was kicked out of the streets. Throughout our fight, Catherine refused to speak up for me or offer me any help. I mean, I knew she could not do much, but I still thought that as my sister, she would have my back, but she clearly didn't. As a homeless person, I decided to reach out to my pastor for help. He was surprised to hear that my parents had thrown me out and immediately helped me get in touch with a local shelter. The shelter provided me with a temporary place to stay and connected me with resources to help me out. Despite how tough this was, I was still happy because I knew that this was just a temporary thing until I could go away to college. I continued to work and save as much money as I could throughout this time. My situation did not go unnoticed and many people from our community reached out to our parents to shame them. My pastor gave them a stern talk about how terrible they were as parents. I guess this is why my parents must have started to feel guilty, because they tried to get in touch with me and asked me to come back home. Dad told me that I would have to pay a small rent fee to him, but otherwise, he was fine with me moving back home with him. I refused and told him that I would rather sleep in the shelter or on the streets than ever share a roof with him and mother. I stuck to my words, and in a few months, when I finally went away to college, I knew that our relationship was completely done. This is why I had not talked to my parents in a year, and Catherine didn't have a phone of her own as our parents refused to get her one, so I had no way to stay in touch with her. One night, I woke up to several calls from an unknown number, and when I picked up, a nurse told me that our parents were in the hospital and I needed to come down immediately. I asked them if Catherine was okay and they told me that she wasn't in the car but that she was badly shaken up. I had to take a bus to go back home and it took me a few hours to reach the hospital. I guess Catherine was alone during this time because the moment she saw me, she screamed at me about being late and how selfish I was to not even be by our parents' side as they were dying. I tried to tell her how my college was quite far away and it's not like I could just fly here, but she wasn't ready to listen. Later, when we talked to the doctors, they told us that our parents were in critical condition and there was a high chance they might not recover. Hearing this, Catherine broke down crying while I held her and tried to be strong. I know I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, but I still didn't want them to die. Catherine was clearly a mess and I did not know how to handle the situation alone. A few days later, our parents passed away in the ICU. All our parents' friends helped us organize the funeral and made sure to support us during this difficult time. After the funeral, our dad's lawyer informed us that he had named Catherine to be the sole inheritor of the house and their bank account. I was not surprised by this because by then I already knew who the favorite child was. Catherine didn't even blink or question why our parents had left her everything. However, since Catherine was just 16 years old at that time, she could not stay on her own. This was a huge problem and she got scared that she might be up in an orphanage. We didn't have a lot of close relatives who were ready to take in Catherine, so I decided to step up. This is why I had to drop out of college in order to take care of my minor child. Looking back, I was a fool to do so, but at that point, as an older sibling, I had no choice. I could not just think about myself, I needed to think about Catherine also. While she continued to study high school, I decided to get a job so I could earn my own money. Not a lot of companies like to hire an adult without a degree, but lucky for me, some of the people in my community helped me out in getting a job as a secretary. In the beginning, I wasn't earning well, but over the years, my pay has increased significantly. During that time, I spent all my days and nights taking care of my little sister and making sure that she had everything. While she could withdraw some money from our parents' account during an emergency, she still didn't have full access as she was a minor, so whenever she was short of money for school or extra expenses, I bore them without any complaints. After graduating high school, I encouraged Catherine to apply to universities expecting that she could get a degree, unlike me at least. However, all my dreams were shattered when Catherine informed me a few months ago that she had been secretly dating a guy for the past couple of years and they had decided to get married. I was shocked, to say the least, because I had no idea that my sister, who always looked so innocent, even had a boyfriend to begin with. I was also confused about why she had kept it hidden from me after our parents had passed away, but when I questioned her about it, she told me that she didn't think it was that much of a big deal. She then went on to say, without missing a beat, how she would love for me to organize her wedding since I had such good tastes. I was surprised that she wanted me to be involved since she never liked the way I dressed or my hairstyle. However, I thought maybe my sister had grown up and this was a chance for us to bond. Throughout the wedding planning, whenever I would tell Catherine that I wanted to meet the guy, she would come up with an excuse about why I couldn't see him. One time I put my foot down and demanded that I needed to meet the guy she was about to marry, so she let me talk to him on the phone. He sounded decent, so I knew this was very much real and was in fact happening. He told me that they had been in a long-distance relationship for a few years, and that was the reason why I'd never found out about it. Catherine and her future husband told me that they were having a wedding in his city, so it would be convenient for his parents and that he was going to fly us both out there. He assured me that he was grateful for me to plan the wedding for him and organize everything, since he didn't want Catherine to worry. I felt this was really sweet of him. Yesterday, in the early mornings, I could hear some scuffling, so I woke up to check out the noise. I noticed Catherine tiptoeing her way around the house as she got ready. I also noticed that she had her luggage packed. Having just woken up from a sleep, I was confused for a moment, so I looked at her curiously. When I asked her about where she was going, she jumped in fright as she had not seen me standing silently in the stairway. I asked her if something had happened, and she turned red in embarrassment as if she was trying to hide something from me. She then looked me straight in the eye and told me that she had hoped I would not have woken up, since it would have made things so much easier. I asked her what she meant, and she went on to tell me that she was leaving. She told me that now that she was getting married, she didn't want to live in this house anymore. My eyes widened in surprise as I searched her face, trying to decipher if she was pranking me or not. I asked her what about her house, and she replied that she had already contacted a real estate agent and given them a copy of her keys so they would be showing it to potential customers. I then asked her what about me, since she was doing all these things without even giving me a heads up or discussing it with me. Catherine shook her head and told me that there was nothing for her to discuss and that she knew I would overreact, which is why she wanted to silently walk away from me. I don't know why, but hearing her hurtful words, my eyes filled up with tears, which only made Catherine more irritated, I guess. She continued to tell me how she had hated living with me all these years, and she never really considered me as her sister, which is why she didn't want her future husband to meet me. I asked her what about the wedding, and she laughed, telling me that I was ridiculous for even asking about it because I should know my place and that I was just an unwanted trash in her life. She then informed me that her cab was waiting outside to take her to the airport, so she didn't have time to answer any of my questions. Before closing the door, she told me not to ever contact her again and that I should move out as soon as possible so that the house could be sold in time. After she left, I remember sitting down on the floor and just taking it all in. For a moment, I felt like I was in a bad dream, but this very much seemed real. I started to cry as my heart broke, knowing that my sister, the only family I had left, hated me so much as to discard me now that she was clearly done using me. I had given up my scholarship, degree, and dreams to take care of her, and she had tossed me aside like I meant nothing. In a fit of anger, I decided to call the wedding florist and singer to cancel their appointments. I had been paying for them as a gift to my dear sister, but now that I knew I wasn't invited, I felt no obligation to continue. I know my sister is in for a surprise, since she won't be able to rebook them, especially the singer, who will likely get booked up. She's probably going to call and shout at me, but I don't care. I am so hurt by her betrayal. I just don't understand where I went wrong in my life. Did I do something to make my sister hate me so much? Ida for being petty and trying to get back at my sister after being uninvited from her wedding? Update 1. Hey guys, so I feel much better after reading all your stories. Thank you to everyone who reached out to me in my personal DMs to check in on me. I promise I am doing much better now that I know I am not alone. To everyone asking as to why I sacrificed for my sister, I do blame myself. As the oldest, I thought this was what I was supposed to do. I think it would have been better for me to continue getting my degree, and Catherine should have lived at an orphanage, but now it's too late to regret. I feel like moping about my decision years ago is not going to change anything. Update 2. Okay, so as expected, my sister called me to yell at me for canceling her florist and wedding singer. At first, I didn't pick up her call, but after her persistently calling me, I decided to pick up. She told me that apparently, I had no right to cancel them without at least giving her a heads up, and that she could have paid for them instead. I laughed and told her to never call me back again, as I had done exactly what she deserved. She continued to tell me how both she and her fiancé think that I am extremely selfish and that this is why our parents never loved me. Before she could speak further, I disconnected the call as I felt so pissed hearing her words and blocked her immediately. I have no idea how she has the audacity to be angry at me when she literally abandoned me and asked me to move out while I spent years of my life sacrificing and taking care of her. How can some family members be this ungrateful and vile? I am just done with her. I don't care if her man brainwashed her or she has always been this way. She can do whatever she wants. I am done. Update 3. Hey everyone. It's been several months since I last updated here. I just wanted to let you know that I moved out of my sister's place and I am currently living in a rented apartment. I have blocked my sister from everywhere and she doesn't have my new address, so there is no way she can ever disturb my peace. I have no idea about her life, but as much as I am angry with her, I wish her nothing but the best. A lot of y'all pointed out to me how our parents are to be blamed for traumatizing both of us, and this is exactly why I don't hate my little sister even after everything she put me through. I know she will get her karma, and when she does, it will be on her own. I am concentrating on taking care of myself and focusing on my skincare and job. I have started to go out for mini self-dates which bring me a lot of joy. I have been reading self-care books and joined a gym. I am mentally much better than I was a few months ago. I think I'm going to be just fine. Thank you to anyone who stuck by me through this wild ride.